that's gonna be too much hassle to do the duels because I have to set up on my end.
Yeah,
So
that's
I think
hey,
it's just easier.
that's no problem at all.
And then in the future, I can do it.
Yeah, no problem at all.
All
Oh,
right. So for this, I think we're gonna go to you do it on chess.com or Lichess. Where do you usually do it?
I do chess.com.
All right, chess.com. So I'm gonna go to chess.com,
Perfect.
and we
Perfect.
should be friends, are we?
I think so.
So I should be able to find you in the live chess.
Yeah, I
You
think
go
so.
there. Okay, 1 second. Yep. Salesman Frank, you are online. Perfect. We are
Yep.
friends. All right. So let me know when you want to start. We can
Okay.
definitely start with the game right away, or we can do a little introduction, or I can talk a little bit about my background, openings, whatever you guys
Yeah, why don't you go
want to do.
ahead? I'm typing your name in. Why don't you go ahead and just let everybody know, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Grandmaster Eugene Perlstein. Most of you guys know me from my chess.com videos. I recently published a huge project, every single gambit refuted. It's quite an undertaking. Of course, I cannot refute Queen's Gambit, such a good opening. So mostly it's focusing on like these online gambits that are recommended, by like Eric Rosen, like the Stafford Gambit, the Halloween Gambit, similar stuff like that. But I am tackling some pretty serious openings, such as the Evans Gambit. It's actually a very serious opening, and many similar ones. Like the King's Gambit is actually not an easy one to refute, so I'm covering the King's Gambit as well, and hopefully more and more gambits are going to be published on chess.com. I'm also known as the chess author of chessopeningsexplained.com. It's basically two books, repertoire books that I co-authored with grandmasters Albert and Gingy. And for those of you who don't know Roman Djindjikhashvili, he's a legend. One of the first, video series I helped him produce, I want to say back in the 90s, the Roman Forum. It goes way back. And of course, he's made over, I want to say over 200, 300 videos. And I helped him with some of those. And of course, the books are based for Black, Accelerated Dragon, Bogo, and Nimzo. And as White, it's an E4 repertoire covering specifically the Grand Prix attack. I have since added more and more lines to the website, such as really cool line move to F4 against the French. Very rare line, but I really like it. And so definitely check it out. And I think as far as the openings are concerned, I'm probably one of the world's expert in a lot of these openings. I have worked with a lot of, students started from beginners to even strong grandmasters. So even like let's say top 100 players in the world. And my background is I became a grandmaster. I'm originally from Russia. I moved to the US when I was 14 in 1994. In Russia, I was already coached by some of the top coaches, including Sveshnikov. I think you mentioned that you like Sveshnikov.
Yeah,
And he himself taught a class where I was one of the kids. And I still have handwritten notes from his opening.
that's awesome.
And I have some funny stories about that. And then I also was taught by Zaitsev. He's kind of not as well known on the West, but
I've
he
heard
was
of him. Yeah.
Karpov's coach. He made his kind of world-renowned opening expert, the Zaitsev variation of the Roy Lopez, which to this day is
Ah,
still a very powerful defense.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
He is kind of a legend there in his own right, but not well known as a player.
Right.
Just a very strong. So basically, I was taught by a lot of guys, and then at some point, I won the U.S. Junior Championship in the year 2000.
Cool.
I also won the Sanford Fellowship. It's like a pretty big money award given to the best player. You have to apply for it in the US under 25. And I won it the same year. And I took 2 years off from UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which at that point was a chess powerhouse. Now there are many other colleges that are very good. And I basically pursued chess full time for 2 years, and I studied with Grandmaster Yosef Dorfman. He was Kasparov's coach for many years, and that, of course, he is also known as the Etienne Bacrot, one of the French top players. Now Bacrot is not as active, but Dorfman was a really great sort of person to work with in addition to Jinja. And I worked with Alex Anishuk, Jan Elvest, Alexander Vaitkevich, basically lots and lots of famous players.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, sounds like it. I will tell you, Eugene, I actually knew you quite well from the books that you were talking about.
Uh-huh.
I studied both the books. One thing you'll notice, I talk about this a lot. I've looked at all sorts of different openings. Like I've looked at every opening in the you could
Okay,
think
so you
of.
have a good knowledge of the basics, yeah.
But I just have never like specialized in them. So
Specialized, yeah.
I've been through the whole book. I just didn't really retain a lot of it. But yeah, I'm
That's true,
familiar
yeah.
with like a lot of your Grand Prix stuff,
Hmm,
the
hmm.
French stuff that you went over in that book, and I distinctly remember going over those books. But
And obviously, I wouldn't say that that's the only openings that I play. Like,
right,
I specialize in those openings, but because I'm a grandmaster and I had to adapt and change, and, I can play e4, d4, c4 pretty much on a whim.
yeah.
And the same with black. King's Indian defense was another one of my specialty that we just decided not to add in that book because we decided to keep it solid with Nimzo and Bogo. But I would say King's Indian I've played all my life. So there are many openings that I feel pretty comfortable with.
Well, and I knew you would be because, and that's what I tell, I get a lot of questions from people like,
Hmm.
hey, what's the best opening? What opening should I study? I'm an 800 player. What's the best opening? And I always tell them study all the openings.
Hmm.
You're gonna at some point you'll have to specialize in an opening, but you really
Right.
have to understand how to play all the different positions. So I don't, some people say just learn the London system and you'll know exactly what you're doing every time, but you're not going to be as good of a chess player when you do that.
Yeah, I
So
guess it depends with your goal. If you're like a club player who is not really ambitious and you just need a good opening, relatively easy to learn, of course, I would not advise you to play the main line. I don't know, let's say Najdorf.
right.
I think it's just like too much theory. You're going to get overwhelmed rather easily, right? But if you need something simple like Grand Prix attack, is what I
Right.
would recommend. Or if you don't want to play e4 because you're afraid of all the different options, like you said, London system is not a terrible opening.
Yeah.
Even Magnus Carlsen Kamsky played at the very top, right? So
No, and I actually have
it's
played it quite a bit on the stream. There's a lot of nuances to it that you can outplay people with it in the London system. Yeah.
absolutely. I
So,
mean, I've played it myself. I feel pretty comfortable. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of adult students who are busy with full-time job and kids, and they're like, you know what? I just want something simple. I actually like the London system
yeah.
for that type of player because they know exactly the plan. Every game is very, more or less goes according to a certain plan. They know the structure, they know the ideas, and it's relatively easy to learn, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that's the position I've been in for a long time is where I just don't want to have a terrible position out of the opening because I feel like I can fight back with some sort of maybe slight disadvantage, but now I'm getting
Hmm.
to the point where I'm an expert. My rating USCF rating now is 2080, and I really want to make that jump to master, and I really need
Hmm.
to start. I mean, really playing the opening well. I mean, in order to do
Yeah,
that.
I would say that's a pretty interesting cutoff between 2000 and you want to go to like 2200, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say that rating you almost need to specialize
yeah,
in openings in the sense that you want to be on autopilot so that when you get a middle game position, you know exactly what to do,
exactly.
and that will help you sort of to prepare. I feel like that's an important idea,
Yeah,
repertoire to have.
and so
Mhm.
what one thing is are, now are you guys hearing you're hearing Eugene, right?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
I can see the desktop audio moving now when you're talking. So
Perfect.
that was one thing. One of the reasons I reached out to you is, I started thinking about. By the way, hey guys. Okay, perfect. Yeah, let me know if you hear any sound issues, but it sounds like it's going well. I remember, and I saw that you had done some stuff on the Scandinavian, and
Yes, I have worked on both Queen D6 in the past. Now I like Queen A5 a little bit more. Um, there are some subtleties actually between the two. Actually, my friend John Bartholomew even recommends Queen D8.
I saw his one of
Uh,
his videos on that.
I honestly a little bit more skeptical about Queen D8. For somebody like your level, you probably Queen D8 is a little bit too simplistic. It's not bad, but it's
Yeah,
a little simplistic. I think Queen A5 or Queen D6 poses a little bit more problems for white, just a little bit more than Queen D8. Because Queen D8, you're basically saying, you know what, I'm just giving you whatever you want to do, and I'm just going for my setup. Whereas the other two moves, white has to be, there are a lot of tricks that white can fall into and
yeah.
traps as well. So you have to be more careful as white. So um, that's what I would probably focus on those two.
So let me give you a little bit of like what I'm struggling with, and so basically,
Mm-hmm.
so I played the modern system for a long time, basically my whole career. That's been, I would say my main opening, and
Like
I've
G6, Bishop
yeah,
G7.
G6 Bishop G7. I've played the
Got it.
Sicilian a fair amount, enough to like I could play Sicilian at an expert level right now against anybody and feel okay about it.
Yep.
But I I struggle to, in certain positions where, and I'm finding this as I'm experimenting with the Scandinavian, that
Right.
there's
Mm-hmm.
certain positions in both the Sicilian and the Scandinavian where white is very solid
Mm-hmm.
and they have a slight space advantage, and I don't
Yes.
really know how to attack it, or what my plan should be. And the reason I brought up the modern is because the modern is always very easy for me to understand what my plan should be,
Mm-hmm.
because white creates targets for you, right?
Yes.
Even though
Let me
you're under.
actually share my board so we can talk more in
Yes.
detail,
Yeah.
because we can
So
talk
okay,
more
so
in
how to.
abstract, but I will just send you the invite.
Okay.
You have a board, chess.com board ready for your stream?
Yes.
Okay, so I will send you the invite
Okay.
to my board. Let me set it up one moment.
Sure.
Analysis board. There we go. And now I'm going to send you the invite.
Okay.
So then we have more specific discussion about
Exactly.
different openings. Okay, so you can accept.
Perfect.
Now let me flip the board. And so
Okay.
we're talking, guys, about the modern Sicilian or the D5, the Scandinavian, right?
Yes.
All right. So here is the sort of the difference. The modern, okay, you are given the center right away for move one. Now, that's not ideal because, yes, he can play like knight f3, bishop e3, different plans for white, right?
So sorry, Eugene, I didn't. The
Mm-hmm.
board is still showing the white side here. I don't know that it really matters all that much, but is there a way
I
for?
flipped it on my end. If
Oh,
you want to
okay.
flip it on your,
For
yeah.
some reason,
Is it flipping on your or no?
there's always.
But you can see like the highlighted pawns and
Yeah, it's
everything.
not a big deal. We'll just leave
Okay,
it.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter which
Yeah.
color, but
Yeah.
yeah. So the modern is basically saying to white, you know what, I'm just going to give up the center,
Right.
right? It's a pretty serious undertaking because if you make a few inaccuracies later, you're just going to lose the game.
Right.
So, for example, if your opponent knows their stuff and they go for the most principal lines, queen d2, castle, and just checkmate you,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be very difficult for black to recover from this because if you don't play this perfectly, I think the only way to play this position is a6, b5. It's
Right.
very sharp, double-edged. If you know your stuff, great. If you don't, well, you're going to get in trouble.
Right.
So you kind of already see grandmasters are lazy in the sense that we don't want to concede we don't want to make any concessions. right? Giving you the center to white player, like see these pawns and a little bit more space, is a small but kind of lasting concession. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to be a little bit more flexible. So here's the Sicilian, right? The Sicilian is the philosophy of okay, white can play the open Sicilian. We can play this. Even this is a move, by the way. Okele, a6.
Right.
You might have even seen that. Very sneaky move. But let's just stick to something simple. We are giving up the center a little bit, but in reality, guess what? Two pawns against one, we actually have long-term advantage.
Right.
People don't understand that black is actually better in the end game or in the long term. So, as a matter of fact, more pressure is now on white to prove that white can attack. And typically in the accelerated dragon, so if we do this move order, white tries to set up the regular dragon like attack, Yugoslav attack. You've probably heard of this
Yeah.
name,
Mm-hmm.
where they go this way and it fails miserably because of this pawn that's still on d7.
Right.
So they usually play f3, and then now you see the problem. I won, oh my god, countless games on my stream against people like club players. And the funny part is people still walk into this. For example, they say, I'm just gonna play all these moves on autopilot.
Right.
Now they realize there is a little issue. They go back, and after this, they resign. But believe it or not, this is already not simple. Like, it's not easy. You cannot go here because you're gonna lose the knight. The only way to stay in the game is to take. Now white takes, we check. Bishop has to take, right? We take here. And this endgame is unpleasant for white. Even though black has broken up pawns, this pawn on e4 is just as weak as this pawn on c6. They cancel each other out, these guys, right?
Yeah.
But all the other things are in black's favor. This knight is a monster. This bishop is a monster. But more important, black has the half-open file. Imagine connecting that rook on b8 with the bishop on g7.
Right.
Like, bad things could happen. And obviously this knight on c3 wants to jump. It's restrained by the pawn. So that's an example of a opening with a solid static reputation. A lot of people ask me, well, why don't grandmasters like Carlsen play it on a regular basis? Well, the reason why they don't do it on a regular basis is because, once again, the word space can be taken by this move c4. It's called the Maritz bind. That's the only drawback of this opening. As a matter of fact, Magnus and his second Dubov, this Russian super genius with all these crazy ideas, what they've been doing is, to avoid the Maritz bind, they start with this move order.
Uh-huh.
And then a lot of people are scared of the Sveshnikov, like e5 or knight f6 and e5.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what they do against Magnus and Dubov sometimes, they play c3, knight c3, sorry, to avoid the Sveshnikov.
Okay.
Right? Because now after d6 or e6, just a normal Sicilian. So what they do is they play g6, and guess what? They get the accelerated, they tricked white, and now there's no Maritz bind.
Huh.
Now, I'm not afraid of the Maritz bind because I know those positions quite well as black. I'd rather have slightly passive endgame against a GM that I can equalize than to get checkmated in the regular dragon.
Yeah.
So people are just generally afraid of endgames and be slightly worse. But I don't mind endgames in the Maritz bind. As a matter of fact, I even win some of them against people like a little bit, weaker.
Yeah.
So that's the drawback of this opening. Now let's talk a little bit about the Scandinavian. Obviously, the biggest drawback is the tempo loss.
Right.
That you have to move the queen. So queen can go to d6, d8, or a5, right?
Right.
Now, I like a5 these days a little bit more because after d4, there are lots of ideas where this tension favors black. And now knight f6. Usually they play knight f3. You can play c6, bishop c4, bishop f5, bishop d2. That's more or less the main line these days.
Right.
And a lot of people are afraid of these knight jumps, but honestly, it's not a big deal. I like E6 is the main line. I like knight d7. It's a little bit more flexible move.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually prepare the castle long plan. And here I think I move the queen back in anticipation of the knight jump. And after castles, I like to hit this bishop with b5. And then I think, let me just remember. Yeah, I think I want to do this, kick the knight, and now I play e6.
Yeah.
And so this is the ideal setup. A lot of the times this pawn is actually on b7, but in this specific case, it's on b4. And this setup is called the Caro-Kann setup. So there's a lot of similarities. Why is it called the Caro-Kann setup? Because the main line of the Caro-Kann, let me go all the way back, is this. And you're going to see the similarity. Takes, bishop f5. For many, many years, this has been the default way to play for both sides. h5, bishop here, or they play knight f3 first, doesn't really matter. Bishop d3, and you get to see the setup. Bishop f4 or bishop d2 these days, you do this, castles. And now queen c7 or bishop e7. Queen b6 is a move. But this is the Caro-Kann setup. Okay, now, what is important to know about these Caro-Kann setups? Well, this pawn can go to c4 in the future, right?
Right.
This knight on g3 is not really doing much, but it's actually on the way of the pawn. Usually it goes to e4. And of course, the fact that we can have opposite side castling, this g4 is very, very, even sometimes they play knight f1 and just play g4 because you have a hook. This pawn on h5 is a hook for the attack.
Right.
So what they do these days is you think about Caro-Kann, and people are not really happy with these positions. What they do in the Caro-Kann, they play this advance. Very annoying setup.
Right.
And within the advance, there's lots of different, there's the g4 lines, there's the h4 lines, there's the knight f3, the short line, there's it's insane amount of theory.
Right.
So what my take on it is that because advance is so popular, I actually would call the, funny enough, I would call the Scandinavian, if we get this structure, the advanced, not the advanced, or rather the improved Caro-Kann, because you avoid the advanced variation and you can still get your setup as I showed here.
Right.
Right? The only drawback is the queen moved twice, here and then back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's think about it. Remember how in the Caro-Kann this knight goes here and then here and hits the bishop? It's actually misplaced, completely misplaced on c3. Doesn't belong there. The bishop does not belong on c4. Remember how the bishop just get kicked around here?
Right.
And because of these two pieces that are just misplaced, we can afford the two tempi. And then, of course, the plan is to do this, and it's very difficult for him to generate an attack. For example, a lot of people play this move to get this going. We simply play h5. This is actually modern chess. Nimzovich was the father of prophylactic thinking. You guys heard of Nimzovich, right? You know Frank Nimzovich?
Yeah, my system. Yeah,
my system, yeah. So he was the first player to actually say those words, prophylactic thinking. No one has even thought of that before him. Obviously, players have understood that there is such, but they haven't formulated. He was the one who said, you know what? If you don't stop your opponent's plan, if you allow this, you're just going to get checkmated. For example, let's say you're not careful, you just develop the bishop. Black is actually in big trouble.
Yeah.
I would even say close to losing.
And actually, so this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm actually running into this difficult type of scenario.
Exactly.
In the variation where white plays bishop c4 early, and then something like and we can definitely keep pursuing this, but it just maybe so like
if
a lot of
it's a good
times
segue, we can talk about bishop c4.
Yeah, and
tell me when queen a5 bishop
so
c4.
So even like right here, if they play bishop c4, or you know, even so let's say after let's go knight c3, queen a5, and then bishop c4 right then, instead of d4.
Got it. So like super early bishop c4.
Yeah.
Yes. So they have a flexibility. They can do this maybe.
Right, and then I'm always kind of wondering, where do I put my bishop, because then, you know, f3 and g4 and h4 can come, and A little
That's a
bit
good question.
uncomfortable.
Yes, I think I would recommend just because this you cannot really live without knight f6, right?
Right,
Let's establish what he's gonna do. Is he gonna commit to d3, or is he gonna commit? Because either of these moves will give us some information.
right.
The moment he plays something like this, okay, now we have to be a little bit scared of the pawn push. Like for example, here's when you get into trouble, moves like that, right?
Right.
In that case, what I would recommend is we have to be flexible. Sometimes we may even need to play e6, lock our bishop up temporarily, but in turn we can actually play for c5, knight c6, and then get the bishop to d7 or b7. Because he's
Okay.
playing slow, we can play slow.
Okay.
So this is not completely out of, it's a little rare, I would have to say, but the problem is you don't really want to walk into his main sort of ideas.
Right.
I mean, even if you walk into all that stuff, I would argue that, you're still relatively safe. But there are some dangerous lines lurking to get the bishop here. Odd looking knight g7 moves.
Yeah.
So definitely e6 is one of the ideas. Sometimes even e5 I've seen.
Yeah, so okay, so that's a good note because I never I was always thinking, I don't want to play e6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously and lock my bishop in, but it makes sense, in this particular situation,
But there are
you
even
know.
cool ideas like if they do this early knight f3 move,
And
there are
that's
even cool
that's
ideas
the other
here.
one that is killing me. I
You can do
cannot.
knight c6, or you can play bishop g4 first to force him to do that, and now knight c6.
Okay, and so like in this position,
Mm-hmm.
say they play like I don't know, a combination of d4 and c4. I always
Right.
feel like my queen is just very
This
okay.
is the key move, queen
Okay, queen
f5. Yeah.
f5. Yeah. Okay.
And then you want to undermine this a moment.
Okay.
This pawn is actually quite weak, a lot of the lines.
Gotcha.
Very, very tricky setup. I mean, it has almost no resemblance to your typical Scandinavian with c6 and e6, but this is, I would even call a separate chapter. Like it's not anywhere close to that line. Well, because white saved this huge temple, right? The knight can go there. So it's a completely different setup.
Okay, so what happens after knight c3 then?
Okay, so here we have two possibilities. One, you can start greedy. I mean, that
Oh, okay, right.
we can already. I mean, I don't know what the result of the sequence is. Is he losing? Is he how? I mean, are we
Yeah.
losing ourselves? Like, right? We
Yeah.
have to be careful with bishop g4.
Yeah.
Okay, the line continues. We
Yeah.
can have this intermezzo check.
Yeah.
So
This
it's a
is
little crazy.
interesting.
Now that's a little bit not safe, right? This
Right.
may be a safe move. This is a big deal. How does he defend the pawn?
Okay. Okay, so bishop e3.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Okay, maybe knight f6.
okay.
Then maybe he's gonna castle.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, now we have to be careful because we're a little bit behind with the attack. If he
Yeah, I
gets
would
that
be
going,
I would be very worried in this position
yeah, if he
personally.
gets that going without us getting counterplayed, I would be not happy
Yeah.
with the outcome of this opening. So it could be that e6 is too slow.
Okay.
Like if we can't generate threats in the next two moves, for example, this is the most obvious move, right?
Right.
Like he's about to checkmate us here.
And this is a position as I've been experimenting this kind of thing I've been in before, and I just get smashed, and I'm like, where's my counterplay at?
Yeah, so my question is, does this work tactically?
Yeah. Okay.
If it does, we're in the game. If
Right.
it doesn't, we're busted. So, okay, for now, Kauski, if he goes there, I mean, I would not be, hesitant to sacrifice here because we're opening a lot of lines. He maybe is just getting mated.
Yeah.
Like, this is our double check, right? King goes, like, just goes there for argument's sake. It's a forced mate.
Right.
Not yet. Rook h1, queen h3 first, right? And then how's he gonna stop this mate?
I don't see it.
Maybe rook e1. I don't believe in this. No, it's forced mate.
Yeah.
Check, right, guys? And then mate.
So instead of
Basically,
g3, I was wondering about. So what if he plays h3?
yeah.
Do
Now
we
just
take
take
on
square.
e3 or
Well, if we take, he takes. We don't have a queen on g3 yet.
right? So I would not be super happy about that because the queenside pawn storm is coming.
Right. He's coming this way. E3 pawn we can attack. Maybe, maybe,
Yeah.
but it's unclear. Like, do you have something more forcing? Okay, let's look at h3 again. Bishop h2, king h1. No, nothing. Knight h b5. Knight takes check. Well, I mean, we could take the rook. I don't know. That's a little bit more risky.
Yeah.
Now, queen trade, we actually are super happy. Like, we're never
Yeah.
gonna lose this. Knight a5, he's
Yeah.
here, we just go bishop e7. Oops,
Okay.
bishop.
Yeah.
We're actually better. GF is the key move. But now, once again, his king is wide open. He's the one getting the checkmate, it looks like. He has
Right.
to play f4 only move, right?
Yes.
But now, I don't know. It feels like he just doesn't have, like, worst case scenario, we have knight moves, like here or here.
G5 even looks interesting.
G5 looks really interesting. I really like that. Another really cool idea is rook h6.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
just
yeah,
ignore
yeah.
it.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't have f5. f5 queen h2 is mate. And
Yeah.
by the way, speaking about mate, uh, moves like that are not totally out of like even this move. Like,
Yeah.
how bad is this? How does he stop this mate?
Yeah.
I mean, he has to give up the queen, obviously, but we're happy with that. But you see, like, these are very double-edged positions.
Yeah.
And if you were to play it as your main repertoire, especially now with powerful engines, what we're doing, right? We're just throwing moves around. We have an end, double check our analysis. Then you save this analysis, play a couple practice games, and you feel comfortable. There's also databases, right? We can look at what the top GMs play. Maybe bishop 3 is still a good move, right? Like this line that I just mentioned. I don't know what the eval is. Bishop g4, we play knight c2. Queen takes g4, queen takes g, we take here, queen takes c2. King moves, like he may have just lost, right? I mean, it's very concrete. So you see what I mean? Like, these are the kind of lines that people have to, like, maybe bishop e3 is actually only a move. And now black is flexible once again. We can play e6, we can play knight f6. Like, these nuances, knight c3 bishop, is important to know. Very sharp stuff. As a matter of fact, let me just quickly check with my engine. Yep, white is lost, guys. Well, according to this chess.com engine, I have a check with my powerful engines, but this is losing. So that's probably why they have to play bishop e3. That's more accurate. So does that make sense? Can you hear me okay? Sure.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Okay. My microphone went out for just a second for some reason. So
Okay.
okay. Um. Okay, we should be back then. Yeah, for some reason my mic just it said your mic isn't working, but I just unplugged it and plugged it back in. So
Okay, yeah, sometimes things malfunction.
yeah.
But yeah, like I just checked with an engine, knight c3 is losing.
Wow, that's crazy.
Hmm.
And I feel
So,
like this is something you could get over the board. I mean,
oh, absolutely. This
yeah.
is such a rare, first of all, Scandinavian is rare, and these lines with knight c6 or bishop g4 first are extremely rare. Like, I'm pretty sure that even GMs can get this wrong as white.
Yeah.
Like, I could easily go wrong as white myself if I haven't studied like this recently.
Cuz C4 seems so natural and
Natural, yeah.
you assume black's going to play queen A5.
Yeah, queen f5 is by far the best. That's why I remember queen f5 because when
Yeah.
they here you may get hit by the bishop and
Right.
later knight c3. Queen here, Some lines even support some knight c2, but most importantly, it's just very safe square. The key, of course, is there's never knight h4 because you take with a tempo. It's important
Oh,
nuance.
okay. Yeah,
Otherwise, you would be losing,
right.
right? Because he's hitting the bishop with the tempo with check if you play queen h5.
Gotcha.
Yeah, knight h4 you always take on e2.
Okay. So let me ask you
Mm-hmm.
so like in the main line, let's say okay, D yeah, knight f6. Okay, bishop c4,
Mm-hmm.
bishop f5. Um okay, what am I doing after knight e5
Before
here?
usually they start with bishop d2, but if they start with okay,
Yeah,
very important question. We have to play e6.
right.
Okay, they play g4 on us, and now I think we have two options. One is we can immediately start with this bishop transfer, or we can go bishop g6 first, wait a little longer until this is going, and then this is the key why the queen is on a5. You see the difference?
The knight's pinned.
The bishop transfer works. And now I believe, let me think. I think just bishop d5, honestly. I don't
Yeah,
really see.
I would be happy with this position after bishop d5.
Although maybe we have some cool. No, I don't like. I was thinking some cool way of sacking the bishop and taking here, like moves like that.
Oh, yeah.
But then he takes here first. Yeah, being flashy doesn't work. Okay, let's just play bishop d5. And
Yeah.
there we go. We've just weakened his king side a lot.
Yeah.
And if he castles at some point, we're actually going to prepare at some point. Not right away. We have to be careful, but at some
Right.
point.
No, I love this position for black.
Yeah. So you see, being overextended is actually going to not be great for white here if you castle king c. So this is vital, by the way, e4 square.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
your question may be, well, do they have time to play bishop d2?
Right.
No, because we take, and take with check.
Right.
So not quite, right? So tempo wise, okay, what if they start with this move? Bishop d2 first.
Right.
Again, here we start counting tempi. Like, do we have time to go here? If we do, great. If not, to look for other moves. You know, other moves are like bishop b4. So
Okay. Yeah. So this is a position similar to I've gotten a few times where I've played bishop b4. I traded. I dropped the queen back, and I am
I have to be a
struggling.
little bit careful about, if they do this and something like this could be really bad for us.
Yeah, this is something I think I've might have gotten myself into a little bit
Yeah.
before.
So that's why maybe we have to be slightly more careful. And if they start with bishop d2, maybe we have to do this first.
Gotcha.
Again, if they take h5, with knight on e5, it's always important to remember we have time to create the loft and escape to h7.
Okay.
Some people even play h5, h6. So these are the nuances you have to know. Yes, knight e5 is definitely a move, but luckily he needs to spend an extra tempo to stop this bishop e4 transfer.
Okay. And so now can't so if we go back instead of 95
Yeah.
how about
By the way, a lot of people do that, which is completely harmless.
right.
Right, then we go with the ideal setup. We go here, or even start with e6, doesn't matter. Here, bishop can castle. A lot of the times, the bishop is quite safe.
So okay, so let's go down this road a little bit. So bishop d2.
Yep. Here you can ignore it if you want. You can go queen c7. I mean, am I worried about knight d5? Probably not.
Okay.
So what? You just go queen d8.
Okay.
Doesn't feel like it's a big deal.
So what happens? So okay, so I know something I've run into is a combination of like rook e1 and knight h4 in some
Right. So
sort of
here you can play queen c7, for example. There is no sacks on e6,
Right.
and then the bishop can go either way.
I
If
think
he
I've
plays g4, it's only gonna hurt him.
okay.
Bishop g6, like a lot of people get really greedy going after the bishop, but you see how it's gonna backfire.
Yeah. Okay.
His king once again is too weak, so he can never do this g4. If he can't ever play g4, then we'll just play bishop e7 or bishop d6 castle and just play normal.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I don't really see any problems. Yeah, castle is just not anything. A lot of people actually do that move because they don't know anything else. They're just like, what's the most simple move for white? It's castle.
Right.
But I have a feeling castle already gives up majority. If there was any advantage, castle gives up majority of it. Because the whole point of the expansion with these guys, you want a castle this way.
Right.
And the main line goes like this, as I mentioned, with 95. So now, this move is probably losing for black. It's just going to be too powerful of an expansion. H5, though, stops the expansion. H4 is, again, prophylaxis.
Yeah.
So it's not easy for him to answer H4. So a lot of GMs play this move, for example. There's a couple of games. Now I like to take and establish this monster knight.
Yeah.
Bishop's going to go there. I could castle. I could wait until castle. Very easy to play for black this position.
Yeah.
And
I don't mind
covered
this position at all. Yeah.
this exact position in my video on chessopeningsexplained.com, and
Yeah.
many people walk into this because they're kind of playing autopilot and they're like, what do I do next for white? They have no clue.
Yeah. No, I saw that video. I like this a lot, and having some experience with the modern, like this doesn't bother me at all. Having because as you know, a lot of times your king is in the center for a long time because you're not
Yeah, exactly. Like
sure
it's
where to put
completely
it.
safe for now.
Right.
There's no way to open the e-file anytime soon.
Right. So okay, so let's say instead of bishop c4 very early on, what if they play bishop d2 right here?
Yes.
It,
Okay, so maybe we can still try to transpose. Maybe. I guess your question is 95 here.
yeah, because I'm trying to. It can't. Because I like the idea of knight d7 instead of e6, but
Mhm.
isn't there a way that they can basically force you to play e6 or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the difference. Because this is the main idea.
Right.
You don't have bishop e4. So let's say we are not careful. Let's just play, for example, since it's analysis,
Right.
this is something that is really, really bad for us. Like since there's no bishop e4, you never want to do that. They just take and we're lost.
Right.
They're about to trap our bishop. I
Right.
guess you can still try to stay in the game by preparing the bishop e4 move. That feels a little bit odd to me. Maybe black can play like that. But the point is e6 is already a mistake in my opinion.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with this? Number one is at every moment we gotta calculate these moves. Hitting the knight. Remember the tactical, this intermezzo.
Right.
And of course we have to calculate every move, these knight jumps. Let's say he plays instead of g4, he goes there. Queen back, he takes. So what? We can take either pawn or even with the knight. Again, we have a completely fine position. But let's just say for argument's sake, ef. This is totally safe for black.
Right.
Gf is interesting too. So you see what I mean? Like this doesn't quite feel like he is, stopping our main idea.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I would say when you're learning stuff like that, break it into parts. Call it, say, the bishop c4 lines, like the main part. And then all these side lines, like early bishop d2, where, they try to go for tricks, make sure you're comfortable. Early these knight e5 jumps. And this where they skip knight c3, move this knight early knight f3, that knight c6, bishop g4 lines. So all of those are like different parts of this opening, and each one should be studied in their own right.
Yeah.
And your knowledge will accumulate. You're like, okay, against this setup, I go for knight c6, bishop g4, for example. Against this other setup, I'm going my mainline stuff. So maybe there are some other tricks where they can do this early g4, but as long as you know all of those tricks,
Right.
you're fine.
Right.
Because that's really why it's only way to get an advantage in this opening, to try to get some kind of a quick development, right? Because you wasted a tempo on queen a5, and you're trying to prove the point that queen can go back, and the knight on c3 is misplaced because it's blocking the pawn.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we have time to do some practice games, 10
Yeah.
plus 5. So let me follow you,
Okay.
observe you.
Yeah. Does anybody in chat want to play, or if you're I don't know, I would say at least 15 or 1600, or I can okay, Jatlo. What's your chess? Send me your chess.com username in the. That's funny. Play a computer. That's kind of funny. It's not a terrible idea. Um, so, but anyway, I could just do. Okay. Oh, okay. So, all right. Levy's curtains. Send me. So we want to do a 10-minute game with the 5 second increment, or what's your chess.com username? Because I can send you the challenge exactly what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And are you Eugene? Are you following me? I guess, or I guess I have to start a game for you to.
I think you got to start the game. I'm
Okay.
not sure if it's going to pop up on my end. I may need to
Okay.
once the game begins, but doesn't matter. Either way, I'll find you.
Levy's curtains. I don't have a message from you. Oh, okay. I see. All right. Yes, so let's see. I'll do I sorry, I didn't know that was your chess.com username.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do let's see. Time control here. We'll do 10 minutes with a 5 second increment, and we'll do unrated. Hopefully that worked. So you should have a challenge coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it sent the right time control. Oh, maybe it didn't. Let's try that. Okay, there we go. Okay, here we go. Do you care if I'm white or black, Eugene? Does it really matter,
Doesn't matter at all.
or
Doesn't
okay?
matter at all.
Um, I'm gonna play. I'm gonna go ahead and play e4. I play e4
Mm-hmm.
and I play the London system also, kind of back and forth.
By the
Um,
way, in my white book against the Caro Khan, I recommend the exchange Caro, which is
yeah.
d4, d5, ed. But you can play what you typically play, and then we can
So
sort of.
I've actually struggled against the Carol Con quite a bit for a long time, but I kind of finally found
Mm-hmm.
a variation that I kind of like a little bit,
Yeah,
um,
the
where
advance. Okay, bishop f5, and now
and
let's see
then
what you play.
for a long time I was playing G4, the bayonet attack. I was doing okay with it, but
Yeah.
um, okay,
Wait.
so now I can just play G4, right?
Yeah, I feel like e6 is an inaccuracy.
Yeah, I think that kind of just loses the bishop. Um,
Yeah, you're supposed to play, I think, h6 there, or
Yeah.
h5.
I wonder if I can allow him to do a take back.
Yeah, maybe you can give him take back.
I don't know if.
Because I don't see how he stops the g4, f3, h5, the pawn.
Yeah. So just I mean just to kind of I mean we'll play. I don't know how to give him a take back, but basically so this wins the bishop. If the bishop goes here, I play f3. The
That's the
bishop's
point of the
trapped.
h4 move, guys.
Right.
And by the way, against h6, do you know the famous idea? You play g4, bishop h7, and e6.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the key move,
Yeah.
e6. And they have to go back to d7. But in that case, they get kind of in this bind because later they play e6. It's like a French with the white pawns expanded.
So the reason that I kind of like the h4 move is because after h5 or whatever, I've been playing bishop d3 and then getting this kind of c4 idea in where
Exactly.
I have kind of a
That's famous.
yeah I have kind of a little bit of a space advantage, but it's not as committal. I feel like as some of the
You know the player who plays it quite well? I think Sam Sebian, this American junior who
oh
is very
okay
strong. He plays this bishop d3, takes queen d3 against h5. Later he puts the knight on e2 sometimes and plays c4. And you still have a powerful attack.
yeah let's just do a draw on this one, Nick, and then here
Yeah, because
I'll resign. Let's just do a
as far as the
rematch.
theory is concerned,
Yeah.
black's already losing. Yeah.
All right. So I'll be black in this one. All right. We'll get a Scandinavian here.
All right, it's Candid. Here we go, guys.
Let's see which variation he plays. All right. I'm gonna do Queen A5.
Okay. So yeah, white has a couple of setups. d4, the main move. Okay.
And so some people I've seen play Bishop F5 first, but Knight F6 is
No, knight f6 is more useful because sometimes the bishop may go to g4 or even stay on c8, whereas the knight, I don't ever see knight going to h6 on e7, right?
right. Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
you got to play the moves that make the most sense.
Okay. So Bishop C4.
Mhm.
So um,
So yeah, he hasn't committed his knight yet, so you probably want to start with c6,
okay.
but bishop f5, knight f3, c6 will transpose.
So we wanted to wait to make sure he puts his knight on F3 before we put the bishop out.
That's the plan. Although once you commit the pawn on c6, yeah, like here he's playing this weird combination of knight g2 and d4.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we really want to play e6 and not with the pawn on c6? Because if we want to play c5, we just waste the huge tempo, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, I would say prove it to him that bishop f5 is a mistake, for example.
Yeah.
Um, bishop g4 is also a possible move, trying to draw f3 and then bishop h5, but bishop f5 is logical.
Yeah.
So knight g3, bishop g6, h4, h5, or h6. Doesn't feel like he's trapping the bishop.
Right. Okay.
So it's a weird combination. Usually with the pawn on d4, knight goes to f3. So, but castle, I feel like that means the pawn expansion is not going to be coming anytime soon because
Right.
his king is on the same side. That means you're just going to get your dream Caro-Kann structure.
So do you think it matters if I play knight d7 or e6 here first?
Probably doesn't. No,
Okay.
probably doesn't. So e6 feels a little bit more solid,
Right. That,
but you know what? My guess it probably will just transpose.
so now just looking at this right now, what do you think my plan is going to be in the next 5 to 10 moves as far as like, am I going to try to attack this d pawn? Am I going to try to play b5?
Yeah, so here the key is you got to finish development first, right?
Right.
So the safest part is to castle kingside.
Okay.
So how do we do that? Put the knight on d7, put the bishop on e7 or d6. It doesn't really matter where, e7 or d6, but some people prefer it on d6 because it's a little bit more active. Some people don't care. Okay,
And
and
so
then
knight d7
castle.
here's fine
Fine, because knight
yeah.
d5, you just play queen d8.
But I saw one
And you don't
time in
mind
one of your
piece.
videos you mentioned bishop b4 if you can play it. Would you play that here?
It's definitely not a bad move, but you are giving up the bishop pair.
Yeah.
So the question is why?
Right.
Again, the grandmasters don't want to make any concessions
Yeah.
unless we have to. If we have a better option, right,
Yeah.
then I would probably play knight bd7.
Okay.
By the way, you can play queen c7 first, because the problem with bishop d6 or bishop e7, bishop e7 he can play knight d5, bishop d6 he can play knight e4, and he's
So
gonna win the bishop pair.
if I played Queen C7 last move and he played Bishop F4, would you put the bishop in
Of
the
course,
way?
then you
Oh,
trade the bishops. Yeah,
okay.
it's a different story. Yes, if you're giving up the bishop on the knight on c3 or trade the dark square bishops, I would prefer to trade the bishops. So I would say 90% of your games against club players will go like this. Sometimes the knight will be on f3.
Yeah.
So this general structure, you should be on autopilot here for black.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to play queen c7. Don't be afraid to develop the bishop, then castle kingside, and then once the opening part is over, that's the real story. How does black play the middle game, right? So we're gonna get to that. Okay, so now queen c7 is what I would probably play,
Okay, and why are you doing that?
just to stop knight e4, knight d5 jump.
Okay. So
Again,
you just don't want to have to worry about it
I just don't
anymore.
want to give up the dark square bishop. Yeah.
Okay. And plus, I mean, I'm assuming there's an idea to play B5 and A5 at some point.
Yes, but I would castle first. So now bishop
Okay.
d6, of course. Yes, once you castle, then all of those ideas come into play. Like g4, you were never afraid, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
That's
here comes the problem. For example, let's just say we castle, kingside, probably kingside.
okay.
The problem now is for white. What does white do? The bishop on c4 is totally misplaced. Knight on c3 is completely misplaced because it's blocking the pawn. Whether the knight is on f3 on e2 doesn't matter. He can't put pressure. And in these positions, it's actually much more difficult to be white, whereas black can just line up your rooks on e8, d8 or d8, c8, play a5, and start threatening maybe b5, a4, trapping the bishop.
Okay.
Of course, another plan is to play for c5, typical Caro idea, but I don't know. I feel like c5
I would
we
be
can
worried
always do.
about knight B5 at some point.
All
Okay,
right,
so I
here's a
was
great question.
yeah.
Yeah. Do we trade or do we play bishop g6 and have him trade?
I personally I would probably trade and then try to put a rook on the D file.
Yeah, in this specific case, I actually think either option is good. You can play bishop g6 and you're not afraid of bishop takes hg because that is rock solid structure.
Yeah.
But of course, if you take on d3, you are giving him a little bit more space
Right.
with the queen on d3, but it doesn't matter. Your position is so rock solid, you can just play rook f d8 and then continue playing. Again, knight on c3 is misplaced.
I'm gonna go back just because
Hmm.
I'm curious if he does trade, how you might proceed to try
Yeah, my
win
plan would
this.
be to play rook f d8. Maybe I'll play a5, a4, do a little space grabbing. Maybe I'm not sure about c5. Maybe c5 itself. Maybe b5, and try to get my knight to b6, c4. Okay, so hg.
Okay. See, that's a great like I've always in this, situations like this. This is the kind of position that I'm talking about. Like,
Hmm.
I don't really have a ton of targets, but what you just said, a5, a4, and then get the knight to c4. See, that makes sense to me,
Right.
and that's something I would never even think of at the board here.
Now I like rook f d8 because we definitely want to activate one of your rooks, and the other
Right.
rook may come in handy when we push a5. All right, now we can play a5.
Okay.
Just start grabbing space. Now, why a5 and not b5? Either option is good, but the drawback of b5, well, actually, with the rook on d1, it's not a drawback, but sometimes you can undermine with a4, right?
Mhm.
Now, b4 square is extremely weak,
Yeah.
so we can start transferring our knight there. So knight b6, knight d5, and knight d4, or knight
Okay.
b6, make him play b3, and then knight d5, knight b4.
Okay. So if he doesn't play b3, you're going to c4 though.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Probably yes. By the way, there are two good squares. The other excellent square for your knight is f5.
Okay.
f5 is excellent because it's hitting the d4 pawn. He can never play g4. The moment he plays g4, his king is really open.
Right. Okay.
Now, it's a little bit more difficult to get the knight to f5. I mean, we'd have to go to what, like c8, e7, f5?
Right.
It's a little unusual road, but hey, this position is so slow from white. He has no threats. Let's say he plays b3, just for argument's sake, b3, knight c8. Let's just play knight c8, just to make a point that you have plenty of time
Yeah.
to get the knight to f5. For example, knight f4. Okay, knight e7. What's his next move?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't see any moves for white. Your
So
next
what
move is
what if he was to go? Oh, I was wondering about knight g3. So I'm glad he played it.
yeah, that's actually a good move. So he wants to play knight e4.
Right.
And even then, after your queen retreat, guess what? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So now let's be smart about this. Maybe we'll start with queen b4,
Okay.
just to, maybe we'll do an endgame, maybe not, just to put some extra pressure on him. Queen b4 is a good move. Pin him up a little bit. Now there's an x-ray on the d file, right?
Yeah.
And your knight can still go to e7 or d6 and f5.
Okay.
I still prefer black somehow. Because I have a target, the d4 pawn, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think.
It's so much easier to place black. Your king is totally safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what the Kara players and the Scandi players live for. Just the slow grind against the d4 pawn.
Well, and this is the part of my game that I need to improve because
Hmm.
I'm fine if it's like he's attacking me, I'm attacking him, and it's very clear like what you need to do. But
Yes.
but these ones, yeah,
All right, this is a great, another great kind of end game lesson, right? We can trade immediately on d2 and then execute the knight e7 f5 plan, or we can keep the queen on b4, allowing him to double our pawns.
right,
Honestly, I don't mind the double pawns because then we can play knight d5 and never get hit by the c pawn.
okay,
So we can still play knight d6, 7 here.
okay,
Of course, there's nothing wrong with trading queens, but just to
okay.
make my point, queen a5 on b4.
I think I'll probably if so I wouldn't mind the double pawns either. I feel like if I could play b5 or something.
And you will eventually. You're gonna put the knight on
Oh,
d5. You're gonna play b5. You're gonna
right.
invade on the a2 square, and those
Ah, yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
stopping the c pawn. It's fixing the pawn.
Okay. So I'm leaving. So let's say I leave the queen here. So what's a useful move?
Either knight e7 or knight d6. Just
Okay.
trying to get the knight going
Okay.
somewhere.
I'm gonna leave the file open and just put it
Yeah.
on e7.
And again, people are always telling me, you know what? Oh, you have double pawns, b7, b4, g7, g6. That's bad. Because we're taught that double pawns are bad, but not all double pawns are created equal, right?
Right.
These are double pawns that actually improve our structure.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Now we can take with the pawn, and now you have a permanent outpost, the d5 square for the knight.
Yeah. I didn't. Looking into that, I didn't quite realize. So after I understood like okay, b5 is something to break the
Hmm.
position open, but I didn't even think about rook a2.
Okay, now white needs a good advice. White probably, well, I want to say white wants to transfer the knight on d3, but the problem is the d4 pawn gets weak.
Right.
So honestly, I'm struggling. Like, I don't know what I would do as white.
Seems like if I was white, I might try f3 and knight
But
e4.
then, but then the problem was f3 also weakens the e3 square.
Right. Okay.
All right, so he went the drastic measure. He's gonna create an IQP. Okay, well now IQP is something that we love, right?
So we'll go ahead and take.
Yeah, now the d4 pawn is a huge target. And there are
Okay.
many ways to hit this pawn, right? We can double the rooks. We can try
Okay.
to trade a pair of knights with knight f5. I kind of like knight f5 and then take with the g pawn, get our pawn a little bit closer. Let's do knight
Right.
f5.
Because I can always double the rooks after
Yeah,
that.
that plan is there. But the problem is now when he takes on f5, and he has to, right? d4 pawn is under attack.
Yeah.
Once we take with the g pawn, we're actually stopping his main idea, knight e4.
Right.
So you see how the double pawn, by moving a little bit closer to the center, now we grab more space.
Yeah, so just simple rook d7 and rook
Yeah.
d8 is going to be
So people who love
difficult.
endgames tend to love Caro-Kanns and Scandinavians because of these exact reasons. You just get
Yeah.
these tiny better structures, completely safe king, and just start grinding people down.
Yeah. And that's honestly, so, I play a lot of players that are, maybe 2 or 300 points below me,
Hmm.
that I have to be able to win these types of positions.
Oh, you have to be super
Yeah.
comfortable. If you're not comfortable here, this opening is not for you.
Yeah.
Then you got to play like Nidorf or something more sharp.
Yeah.
Like this is my territory. I love these positions.
Okay.
But okay, for you. I'm not gonna give you any hints.
Well, it seems like, so
How would you
obviously the
continue
the
here?
pawn is pinned. I could play c5 immediately. It seems like um
It's a logical move, right? But the problem is what's your next? Let's say he just says king f1.
right. Okay.
So the problem with you is you're too impatient. You want to win the pawn right away, but after king f1, king e1, you would have to take, and that's it. Your advantage is gone.
So I'm also looking at knight e4, rook d3, knight c5.
Yep. So that's an interesting idea as well. Now, if he goes back to d2, okay, then he's got some major issues. So after rook
Right.
d3, knight c5, his only move is rook c3, right?
Right.
And he's still in the game
Okay.
somehow. So maybe knight c5 is a little premature. What I like in these positions is improving strategy. Okay. If there's no immediate win, how does black improve? The improving plan is g5,
Okay.
king g7, and then you see what we're doing? We're expanding our space again on the king side.
Right.
Grabbing squares, taking away squares, slowly grinding white down.
Yeah, because white doesn't have anything to do, so I might as
White
well
is
just
total zugzwang.
right.
All right, now let's think about knight c5, rook c3. Okay, we can play knight a6 at the end. Then kind of transfer the knight on b4 and d5. It's not bad. Do you have anything better? Knight c5, rook c3, knight a6. I think that's fine. I guess
Yeah.
we can just play knight f6 and knight d5. Either one is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just has to suffer with that IQP.
I don't know I don't know when our Zoom call is going to end, so I don't know if it's on a timer or not, but
No, we should be good because it's only two people, right?
oh, okay.
You should be good. Okay, now
Okay.
knight a6. I think Zoom for like large
Okay.
crowds, they have like a limit. Again, you see he's struggling to come up. Like imagine being white here,
Right.
just struggle to defend. Whereas
Right.
black is just improving.
Yeah. This is the kind of position I like where only I can get better.
Only black can improve, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you have lots of improvement moves. I see king g7, followed by king g6 or king f6, right? I see f4, maybe expansion, maybe knight f4, and then knight d5, knight e3, right?
Right.
Just so many cool ideas. I see the c5 or e5 just at the right moment, not yet, maybe.
Right.
There's so many cool ideas to improve. And also notice how the pace of the game is super slow.
Yeah.
Super slow. All right, so
Just king
any
g7, right?
yeah, he's just completely stuck. All right, now what are we gonna do next? King f6.
And I'm thinking just knight c7 and knight d5.
Exactly. Now
Yeah.
the knight is useless. Let's get it back on d5. I see that e3 hole
Right.
that we can support that for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he actually just created a weakness in case people are wondering. This h3 pawn
Oh, yeah.
would be a liability. Not yet, because rook h8, king g2, but let's just say 5-10 moves from now, that could be a liability.
It's just, yeah, it's another problem for him to have to worry about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, the problem when the people are worse, any pawn move is only going to make things even more worse.
Yeah.
So now knight d5 is coming.
Yeah.
His rooks are really awful as well. Like, they don't really do anything useful.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, if he had at least the one target to hit, like, I don't know, if he can switch the rooks over to some open file. F4 again, it's not helping him. Not helping him. Now knight d5 looks really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say just leave it, just do nothing about it. Yeah,
Okay, he's probably gonna take on g5. You're gonna take with the king.
right.
He may insert h4 check if he wants.
Would you just keep going forward at that point?
No, I would be a little bit scared. He didn't do that. Okay, so now we have an interesting opportunity. We can stop the f takes g would take, and let's take ourselves on f4.
Okay.
He would have to take with a knight or pawn. And then we have to make a decision. If he takes with the knight, do we trade the knight? He made it easy for us.
So
So he left our monster knight.
Rook h8 looks very.
Yeah, that's autopilot for me. Let's
Okay.
switch targets. Now you want to play rook d to d8, rook h4, double, and then hit the pawns from the side. And see how his defenses are getting stretched really thin.
So you would play rook d8 right now.
Of course, yeah, because you
Okay.
need that rook in the game. That rook is useless.
Okay.
And now rook h4 is a huge threat, and then double. For example, another cool idea, the knight can get transferred via f6 to e4.
Oh yeah.
That's a beautiful outpost.
Yeah. And if the king ever tries to go to g3 or something, knight e3
Might come in, yeah,
yeah.
with tempi.
Yeah.
All right, so now maybe a good time to play rook h4.
Okay.
And finally he collapsed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He overprotects the h pawn, but he
I think I'll
forgets about
take
that.
with the rook.
Yeah, rook takes is the easiest.
Okay.
And the rest is basically just
Yeah, I think I can probably win this
converting.
one from here.
You don't need my help. All right, so we can probably end the lesson here. I
Yeah.
think just to sum it up,
Yeah.
the key is, at least in the Scandinavian, that's the most kind of discussed openings today,
Yeah.
is to understand these structures where white castles kingside.
Yeah.
They're very, very difficult for white because black can just slowly kind of grind white down. The more difficult lines for black is those more tactical sharp lines where this knight e5 comes in.
Yeah.
And again, it depends whether the bishop's on c4 or bishop's on d2, right? All those things you got to take into consideration.
Yeah, but I like your idea of kind of breaking it up into segments of like if white plays early knight e5 or white plays early, bishop d2 or stuff like that, and just kind of what my general plan should be.
Exactly. And there are certain examples where you don't play bishop f5 and e6.
Right.
They're far and less, they're not as sort of popular setups, but at least you have to know when to do that. Once you know that, when to not play bishop f5 and e6, that's going to make your life also easier.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, well, we appreciate you coming on, Eugene. I definitely learned a lot, so we'll definitely try to do this again.
We'll do it again. Yeah, for sure.
We'll coordinate on the next time, and I'll be playing this a lot, and maybe next time I'll have some more questions for you or some games to go over.
Absolutely, I love games. Yeah, we can analyze some of the games.
Perfect. Okay,
all right, Frank. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Okay, guys, that was awesome, wasn't it? Let me get my webcam screen back on here. Let's see here. Activate.